Is that better with the music turned down a little bit? We were trying to keep it a little lively with some music, but it
Yeah,
maybe was interrupting some of the conversation.
yeah, it is.
As long as, hey, Cammy, don't get up
Yes,
and
sir.
start dancing, we'll be okay.
Pardon me?
I say, as long as Rick Branch don't start to dance, we'll be okay.
Oh, gotcha. Good call.
Nobody wants to see me dance less than me.
Cammy,
Yes, sir.
yes, I'm having computer issues. I'm not Jean Blackman. I'm on her computer.
Okay.
And
Well,
so I
I'll
can't,
change your name.
well, pardon me? No, I can be Jean with a
Okay,
G.
okay.
I can be, my sexuality is intact. I'm
You
good.
got it. You're good either. All
I'm
righty.
good. Yeah, I'm
We
good.
gotcha.
I'm good. But I don't have the agenda in front of me. I know I'm to open up,
Yes.
but I'm not able to call who follows because I don't.
You don't have that?
No, I don't.
Okay. I can put it in the chat box. How about that?
There you go with all this fancy stuff. You go ahead and put it in there. Let's see.
Okay, I'll see what I can do here.
That happens, no man, no weapon. Formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends.
Get it?
Plans that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us.
Right here.
Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all, just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is visiting us. Showing living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it goes down, we wanting to man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots be on the ground.
Okay, Reverend Blackman, I just put something in the chat box for you. Tell me if you can see that all right.
If folks want to put their congregation in after their name, if you go up in the upper right-hand corner of your picture, you can usually find 3 dots, and there's a rename thing there that'll allow you to do that.
Lord's name.
Mr. Joe Johnson, I just wondered if you saw the message in the chat box that I put there for you.
You could read it.
Yes.
Wonderful. I thought so. Just wanted to double check. Father Hoffman asked me, so
Okay.
we're all set.
And sorry about that confusion. I was mistaken. I thought I was having my second COVID vaccination today, and I wasn't sure how I would feel, so I wasn't sure I was going to make it.
Right,
but it's really
right.
not till Friday, so I was just messed up on my dates.
Gotcha. Well, no worries. We're allowed to be confused these days. Good grief.
Got the rap music going.
I'm a hero, facing the league of justice. His power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald eagle. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed. And when in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history.
Okay, let's see here.
I love this from Common.
What's that?
This is Jane. I love this from Common. I love him anyway.
Oh.
I want him to be my son.
Well, we've got it's coming up right on our start time, and we've got 53 of the 84 people here. So we're getting there. We're going to give folks just 3 minutes tops to get into the room with us. And we'll start at 6:03 sharp. In the meanwhile, we're so glad you all are here. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. I like being able to see the whole room full. If you're able to turn on your video camera so we can see your bright shining face in real life, that's great. Understand if it's not the best idea for you, but we're all far enough away. We don't care whether you have kind of all your full regalia on or not.
With all of you wonderful people down in Pensacola, I want to share that I'm in Minnesota and the high today was about 2 below zero.
Oh,
Uh,
not good, not good. I've been there.
Oh,
I'm from Iowa originally.
I was on a
grew up in
cla-
Minneapolis, so I know what that's like, Joe.
I was on a class today and I was outside while I was doing it, and it's a class set in Minnesota and everybody was angry at me.
yeah, it's lovely to be in Florida. It can have a little chill in the air, but it's good stuff.
We should be
to
back
where
in
we
about
are.
3 weeks. And our little puppies who don't like the cold because they get their feet wet in that snow, and then they're shaking and lifting their feet. And we tried boots, but that didn't work. But they will be very glad to get back to our yard in Pensacola.
But Joe, I want to tell you, it was a rough day for me. I actually had to wear a long sleeve T-shirt because it only got to 63 degrees and sunny. So, I mean, it was rough, man. I mean, I had to wear a long sleeve T-shirt, you know, so.
I really feel for you, guy. Yeah, that's hard.
It's a cross I have to bear.
I want to remind everybody to please mute their microphones now as we prepare to begin. Our co-president, Reverend Paul Blackman, is going to call us to order now. So thank you, Reverend Blackman.
Yes, I'd like to say good evening to everyone. I am so happy to see you, and I am just ecstatic that you are here today, this afternoon rather, to share with us in the 2021 Research Kickoff. And I'm asking, as Cammie just did, that you would please mute yourself so that we will be able to hear each speaker clearly. And again, thank you so much for your presence here on tonight. I think it will be a helpful meeting, and I think it will be one that you will leave inspired for the work that we have to do going forward. Let us pray. Gracious God, our Father, we come before your presence in humble submission to your will and to your way. We say thank you for this time together. Thank you for these men and women that have come together for no other reason than to make the city in which we live better for every citizen. Thank you. It is my prayer that everything that is done and said here on tonight will be pleasing in your sight. It is in your name that we do pray. Amen. I'm going to, at this time, hand off to Pastor Tellis. Pastor Tellis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-President. Good evening, everybody. I pray you all have a God-blessed day, whether it's 2 below or 62. I think most of you know me by now, but I've been asked to do a reflection on power. And, you know, starting with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday and throughout the month of Black History Month of February, we celebrate the contributions of African-American people to this country. Some places have prayer breakfasts, schools have plays, assemblies, churches have programs, 50 million pastors preach on whether the dream is a nightmare, on and we sing Kumbaya, on and on and on. And we sing, we shall overcome one day. But when will that day ever come? After we sing the songs, we have the meetings, we preach the same sermons over again, we go right back for 11 months of doing the same things over and over again. When will that day come that we overcome? I want to challenge all of us to think about, how do you really honor the history, the sacrifice, and the oppression that Black and brown people and other peoples that have been marginalized, whether they're poor, white, or whatever, have experienced in this country. I want to offer that we do that by building power to dismantle systems that continue to oppress Black and brown people and everybody who's marginalized. I remember when I was a child of about 6 years old, back in the day where all the cars were like a half a block long and had 30-gallon gas tanks. My dad took me everywhere. I was about 5 or 6 years old. Went to a gas station in Pensacola on Palafox Street downtown. There's a post office. But back in the day before malls, that was Sears and Roebuck. If you're old enough to remember when we used to call Sears and Roebuck. Well, in the back of that, they had a gas station back there. You would get in line to get your gas, but it would take so long to fill up these huge cars. You turn your car off. So my dad and I were in the car, he turns the car off, the car in front finally moves, 2 white guys jump in front of him and decide, this is a Black guy, he ain't worth nothing. We're gonna get in front. My dad gets out of the car and confronts them and says, I'm next, you gotta move. And we're talking about the 50s now. And they begin to say things that I didn't really hear. My dad comes back to the car, goes under the driver's seat, pulls out a tire iron and goes back to these 2 men and said, you're gonna move your car. Well, the attendant comes out, makes them leave and says, John, go ahead and pump your gas. And the only thing I could think of, how did that guy know my dad's name was John? Later on in life, I find out that all Black men were called Boy, Willie, or John. When I was growing up, I had to drink from colored water fountains. I had to use colored restrooms. When I was 14, I went to Brownsville Junior High School in Pensacola with 6 other Black children. And that was the worst year of my life. The faculty and students hated us for being there. The teachers on my best day treated me with benign neglect, while other teachers and administrators avoided any contact with us at all. The students used the N-word every single day. One student even used it in a class trying to make a point, and the teacher did nothing about it. It was then that I realized something had to change. You see, up until that point, I was isolated in my own small community, my church and my school. But this 14-year-old boy in the 9th grade went to this school, and I realized right then, something has to change. And it shifted me and made me want to do something about racial oppression. And here we are, decades later. I still find myself frustrated with singing We Shall Overcome. I'm frustrated about the slow progress towards justice. And I'm angry at the way the criminal justice system, and Reverend Rick Branch has talked about it ad nauseum. I'm glad he's fighting that. But our justice system captures and ruins the lives of Black and brown children every day in this country. And I didn't know if there was ever gonna be anything that would change that until one day, the Reverend Cammie Young introduced me to the DART network. And I remember my first conference a few years ago, where I was able to meet hundreds of people from across America who were building power for justice. They were standing up and speaking out for what's right. They were actively living out the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Jesus the Christ to do justice. When I look at the numbers, there are 150 children arrested every year in Escambia County. That's almost 1 every 3 days for silly junior high kid stuff. But I still find hope because all of you are on the call. So it is our job to be a public witness to the injustice our children are facing in the criminal justice system. Every day that our sheriff, newly elected sheriff, and newly elected state attorney are in offices, more and more tasks gets piled on their desk every day. More and more people are pushing them to focus on their agenda and ignore the ones they've already committed to. We cannot let that happen. We have to send a message now that our kids should not be on the long end of a laundry list of things to do. Regardless of how positive they sounded when they were running for office or during a press conference after the election, we have to keep tension in all we do. Our children come first. So we have to build power today, power tomorrow, and power in the years to come. And that way we can dismantle every system in our community that keeps people down. Every system that takes away our residents' right to fair treatment by law enforcement. Every system that takes away their rights to affordable housing. Every system that takes away their right to a quality education, and anything else that we decide to tackle. And what I ask you tonight, are you with me? Are you gonna keep singing, "We shall overcome one day"? Are you still gonna sing Kumbaya and go back to our comfortable lifestyles for another 11 months? Or are we, just Pensacola, gonna do what's right and do it now? That's my challenge to you. Are you with me? Thank you, Reverend Blackman.
I'm not able to see the agenda. Cami,
So yeah, I put it in the
if you
chat
would,
box there since I knew
yes.
that. Yes, it's there for you. Thank you, Reverend Tellis.
You're welcome.
Well, maybe I'll just go ahead and move forward since I'm next on the agenda, if that's all right with you,
It's not in
Reverend
the chat
Blackman.
box.
Yeah, it's not in the
Um,
chat box, Cami.
Well, thank you, Reverend
Okay.
Tellis, for that call to action. And in order for us to be successful in transforming Pensacola, we're going to need to build winning campaigns. And so that's what I'm here to talk with you about, how exactly we do that. So let me just remind you of our agenda this evening, and also thank again Reverend Tellis for his
She's
reflections on
controlling.
power, and move on to share with you about how we cut an issue. Those are words familiar what that phrase means, and so that's part of what I'm here to talk about. My name is Reverend Cami Young, and I'm a member of the Holy Cross Episcopal Church Justice Ministry Network. And as a matter of fact, I also will be serving for a few months, for a few hours a week, as the interim organizer for Just Pensacola until we hire a new lead organizer. One reason why I want to build power is that one of our Justice Ministry Network members at Holy Cross just died of COVID-19 just 2 weeks ago, unnecessarily. Grace Madison was a beloved school teacher at Tate High School here in Escambia County for 30 years. She was in the high risk category due both to her age and her health conditions. And she was systematically not included in the first wave of vaccinations. It's just a reminder to me about our role as people of faith and why it is so incredibly important, why it's life or death for us to keep our criminal justice systems, our education systems, our housing systems, and our healthcare systems aligned with what they were created for, what their intentions are, what God's intentions for them are. So that's why I want to build power, so that we can address these systems in ways, keep them on track, and deal with the life and death things that that are the consequences of when they get out of whack. So let me ask you to type something in a chat box just to get us started, to kind of see what we know, or remind us of what we know or what we want to need to know. There are three major processes that Just Pensacola goes through every single year. Can anyone type in that chat box what those three major processes are? I'm looking to see what your answers are. You have any answers? I see a James Westmark. He's on a good start. The listening process, that's the first process, absolutely. And research to action is the second process, and why you are here today for us to kick off the research to action process. The home groups or house meetings are part of the listening process. Gathering in an initial group, part of the listening process. Probably the third process, and the reason why it's not as, oh, there we go, George Young, ding, 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 the investment drive process. Well, that kind of got lost in the middle of the COVID-19 transition of things. That's the third process. So let me just say, we'll get to that, and there's more information about that to come. But in the meanwhile, let's pause for a minute, and let me just show you a diagram of that three process annual cycle that we go through. You see it there, the three processes, they're all designed to build and strengthen and test our justice ministry networks. That's the heart of everything that we do, our justice ministry networks. So it begins with the listening process up here, and then we go on to the Community Problems Assembly where we vote, and then we move into the research. So January 11th, we voted, and now we're moving into the research to action process that culminates in the Nehemiah action. And then the third process is our investment drive process that will culminate in this, or in part of that will be in our celebration that we do. So that just kind of gives you an overview of the three processes. Our research to action process has two primary things that are happening. So let me just be real clear about what those two things are. The first thing that's happening is we are developing a substantial, winnable issue to bring to the Nehemiah action, to take action on. But the second thing is happening kind of underneath the surface of that, alongside it. The second is continuing to build our justice ministry networks in each congregation. And that is equally important, foundational work. The listening process is the foundation to get us started, but the network building and the strengthening, it goes on throughout each of the three processes. The reason we keep building our networks during the research process is that our power is in the numbers of organized people, right? So we need to make sure that we have lots of people at the Nehemiah Action. We can have the very best research and the most brilliant solution, but if we don't have any people or enough people at the Nehemiah Action Assembly, then all our work was for naught. As I go on, I'm going to frame this presentation about the research to action process using a campaign that was won in Tampa, Florida. And it was about affordable housing. So let's start with some basic definitions so that we can all talk and think about research in the same way. So we have problems and we have issues, and they are two different things. If you will, write in the chat box for me, what do you think is the definition of a problem? And also write in the chat box and make it clear which it is. Write what you think is the definition of an issue. So put problem dash in your definition and issue dash in your definition. I'll give you just a second to respond. Okay. I'm not seeing answers to problems. Let's see. Problem is where people are hurting. Good, good. Tell me about it. An issue, what you're thinking about an issue. Something, problem is something that's not correct, an issue is concern. Problem is an injustice, issue an obstacle. Well, let me pull back up um, our PowerPoint and let's be real clear so that we're all on the same page together. A problem is a statement of something that is wrong, and an issue is a specific solution to a problem. So, can you hear the difference between the two? A problem is a specific statement of something that's wrong. An issue is a statement of a specific solution. Who can do what and by when in order to deal with, to address the problem, to help make it right? Well, let me use again, as I said, the Hope organization in Tampa, what they did. After they voted at their Community Problems Assembly to address the lack of affordable housing, they got to work on researching that problem. They found out that over 104,000 people pay over half of their income on housing. And over 74,000 of those were families who had very low incomes. On top of that, they heard stories about senior citizens that were living in deplorable conditions with mold and rusty pipes because that's all that they could afford for a place to live. That's the kind of thing that makes me angry. And their research committee decided that the solution would be an affordable housing trust fund. They wanted the county to fund $10 million annually to go towards affordable housing for seniors and low-income families. They originally asked for this in their 2014-2015 fiscal year, but they finally got the commitment at last year's action for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. You see, in all of our organizations in the cities around the country that are affiliated with DART, we organize around issues, around solutions, not around problems. Because do you know what happens if you organize around a problem? How do you tell when you're done? Will we ever be problem free? The reality is that we probably will never be problem free. We don't work on problems until they're fixed. We work on issues until they're won. And winning an issue almost all of the time is what happens after the action. The action is the beginning, it's the prompt to the issue being addressed and won. So, how did the Hope organization get from a big, overwhelming problem area like the lack of access to affordable housing to asking for an affordable housing trust fund at the Nehemiah Action? Well, that process is called cutting an issue, because what we're doing is we're cutting down from a really big problem to a specific problem that can have a specific issue or solution that's effective that we can win at our Nehemiah Action. So let me just share my screen again for a second and take a look again at the slide. So we're clear about the problem was that 74,000 families were spending more of half of their income. But example of an issue was that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of $10 million could create 500 affordable units annually. And we were asking county commissioners in that city of Tampa to establish that trust fund for very low income families and seniors in the 2020 and 2021 budget. So you see the difference? The research to action process in a nutshell is understanding the problem, understanding the solutions, the potential solutions, and choosing what ones will be best for us now, and also understanding the decision makers, the people who can make those decisions and changes that we want, as well as who the allies and the opposition are. So let's talk a little bit about that research process. So the day after the Community Problems Assembly, when the Hope Organization voted for affordable housing as their problem to work on, they couldn't jump right into a solution, right? No, there were 3 different things, as I said, that they needed to understand better: the problem, the solutions, and the decision makers. So understanding the problem, the first step means knowing the who, what, when, where, and why, as well as the how. With doing 30 research interviews that year, Hope and Tampa learned a lot. They learned that 1 out of every 5 families in Tampa were spending more than half of their income on housing. A Tampa resident they discovered would need to make $18 an hour in order to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, or $23 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom place to live. At the same time, the minimum wage in the county is $8. $8. That left thousands of people in the area on the brink of homelessness. So after understanding the problem better, they needed to understand some possible solutions. They researched and found out that 800 other communities were solving this problem by creating affordable housing trust funds. They didn't just jump to that solution. They researched and found that that was one of the most effective solutions in over 800 other communities. These trust funds don't rely on federal funding. Local communities can make their own rules and really address the problem of low-income people not being able to afford housing. So they had to understand then what it would cost. They learned it would cost them $10 million a year in order to fund one of these trusts. Hillsborough County, they discovered, has a $7 billion annual budget. Hope also found out that the county was ready to put up millions and millions of dollars for a sports stadium. I think 80 million, but that seems low. Maybe more like 800 million. But whatever it was, they knew that the city had enough money to fund affordable housing. It was good for business. When housing is affordable, people no longer have to move out of the county. That makes the commute shorter for employers and employees and makes schools better because families aren't chasing rent and students stay in school. The Hope organization also had some wins under their belt already, so that they felt they could build enough power. They had enough power already to advocate for this program locally. And they needed to understand the decision makers, who the people were that could implement a housing trust fund. They decided to approach the county to do this because it would make the whole community, the whole county, better and safer. And they also approached some allies that they had built throughout the years and other advocacy groups who voiced their public support and came to the action to show their support for their issue campaign. So let's go back to understanding possible solutions. How did the Hope organization in Tampa come to pursue this particular cut of the issue, how to cut the problem down to a particular solution that they could win? There were lots of solutions they looked at and that they could have pursued. They used a specific criteria to evaluate the possible solutions. We call these issue criteria. So again, let me share the screen for a second to look at the issue criteria that we'll be using. Popular, unifying, winnable, builds the organization, and controversial. So before you get kind of concerned about what that last one is, let's start at the top. The first one is popular. What do we mean by popular? Well, we mean how many and which groups are willing to fight for it. Is the issue something that people in our congregations can get excited about? Will it help increase turnout to the Nehemiah Action Assembly? Many of the Tampa congregations were willing to fight for this for a number of reasons. A lot of their members work with a program called Family Promise, and that means they're having homeless families stay with them for months as transitional housing until they can get them into some permanent housing. Well, several of their congregations in Tampa had a lot of stories about not being able to get those families into permanent housing. A lot of the congregations had personal stories about how the housing crisis was affecting them. In fact, really every congregation in the network had personal stories during the house meeting listening process. And here in Pensacola, during our listening process, we heard a lot of stories about the lack of affordable housing. Stories like Keisha's from Holy Cross Episcopal Church. I was just on the phone with her tonight as she's making her way from the emergency room back to the temporary housing that she's found after being having to leave the place that HUD no longer deemed affordable for them to help her stay in. So she's had to move out. And this brings me to the second criteria after it being something that's popular. It needs to be something that's unifying. It needs to be something that every congregation has a sense of being impacted by. It was exciting for the people of Hope in Tampa to recognize that Black and white congregations alike, people from all different parts of town, were impacted by this problem. The criteria of being unifying also rules out a number of issues that we just won't go to. There are things that we won't be able to have enough support and being united on. So we just won't go and choose issues that are going to divide us. Things that might have to do with reproductive rights or death penalties or things like that. And the third criteria that we need to consider is whether the issue is going to be winnable. If we've cut it down to something that we can actually win. Because if we can't win it, we shouldn't get involved in it. If we pick something that's out of our range, out of our power to be able to win, then we're only feeding people's sense of powerlessness and hopelessness, and we don't need more of that. There are lots of other kind of sub-criteria also to consider in determining whether an issue is winnable or not. So let me just outline what several of those are. In order for it to be winnable, it needs to be specific. Is it clear? Is there a concrete statement that we can make about what we want? We can't negotiate generalities. Again, as we're using Hope's example in the housing campaign, they asked the county, they knew who they were asking for $10 million commitment. They knew exactly how much for an affordable housing trust fund. And they wanted it by a specific date, the 2021 fiscal year. It's something that's outlined in an ordinance so that it's going to be a long-term funding source and they don't have to go back year after year to advocate for it. It's much harder to hold officials accountable to something that's a vague statement. Whereas if you've got a specific statement of what we're asking for, then it's measurable and it's a solution that we can hold them accountable for. The other thing we have to think about is whether there's an identifiable decision maker locally that we can address with, that we can hold accountable for this, that's within our community's power so that they can clearly give us what it is that we're asking for. The Hillsborough County Council was the local group, and they had a track record of winning things from the county in the past. So it was important that when they took this on, they knew that. It's going to be important for us as we take on housing to consider what is winnable for our organization, an organization like ours that's only been around for less than 2 years. Winning the civil citation campaign will help us become more powerful. That's why we'll spend most of our meeting tonight strategizing about that campaign. We need to be able to show that we can win this one in order to have the power with local decision makers to move on to the next one. Another criteria is our organization's maturity. The track record of an organization is really important. In an organization's first year, like ours with Just Pensacola, we're probably not going to be able to ask officials for a $10 million affordable housing trust fund. That's why in our first year, we asked for civil citations from our state attorney and sheriff. It really costs them nothing to do that. That makes our civil citation issue winnable. For the Hope organization, they had been around for decades and could ask for millions from their county. This all goes back to what Reverend Tellis was talking about earlier, about power, about building power. Does our organization have enough power relative to the decision makers involved to get what it wants, to get what people in Pensacola need? The Hope organization decided they had enough power to ask for 10 million. And let me now move on to the fourth criteria. Does it build our organization? Our purpose is to build power, so we need to ask ourselves, how will our issue and cutting it down to an issue and solution build our people power? If our power is in numbers of people, then the question is, how can the issue work to build our power? Does it do things like interest new congregations to join? Will it get more people out to events? Will it engage a certain pastor or certain congregation? Will it engage a new leader? Those are the kinds of things that we'll need to work on. And then the last thing that we'll need to think about is that, is the issue controversial? That last criterion is not about things being standard or cookie cutter. This may sound confusing, but what I want to be clear about is we don't mean controversial in the sense that it internally is controversial among us as congregations and within the congregation, the organization of Just Pensacola. What we mean by controversial is that it means we're asking for something big, something bold. Will it attract media attention? Not just, oh, here we are, the same old of something that could have been done with just a couple of people. Will it make the public pay attention? Controversial is really about how we frame the issue. So I think we're getting close to the end of our time, and I'm going to just go ahead and move along and say that everyone, does everyone see the difference? Give me a thumbs up if you see the difference between something being controversial rather than divisive. You got that? Okay, well, good. So let's just be clear as we move forward that the issue criteria that we're looking at aren't an end in themselves. We need to kind of internalize all of this as we move forward and think about housing as we continue to work together on the issue that we came up with last year of civil citations for addressing the criminal justice problem. There are a lot of people who get excited about issue work, and that's great. But the purpose of doing justice isn't just to win campaigns. The whole truth is that it's about building power, and that may be the harder part. All we do is intended to build the power of Just Pensacola, the people of our congregation. And that's what I mean by issues not being an end to themselves. These issues will be what we're looking at creating as a means to, yes, address problems in our community, but also to help build our organization by getting our organization in the public eye, by surfacing new leaders and new congregations. So we plan to start research on housing this summer after we make progress on civil citations. Our goal is to win the civil citation campaign so that we'll have enough power to now then go on and win the housing campaign. Hopefully after we've got a new organizer in place and ready to go. I'm happy to be in this work with you for the time that I am and beyond, and to build a strong organization that can tackle whatever problems we decide are necessary for us to take on. So now I want to turn it back over to Reverend Blackman and talk about kind of our next steps in the agenda.
Okay, thank you so much, Cammie. Well done. At this time, we're going to have an update on housing from Reverend Hoffman. Reverend Hoffman?
Thanks, Pastor Blackman. This will be really brief because Cammie just basically said it. In short, we have several things going against us to organizing a brand new campaign right now around housing. One is we have a transition in lead organizer. The second is we are still new and we're still learning how to do things and how to build that sort of people power and the organization. And the third is COVID slows everything down, the ability to hold meetings the way we used to. And so we don't want to take off more than we can adequately address right now. So therefore, our goal as an organization is going to be to not focus on housing, even though it's one of the things we voted on that we're going to deal with, but deal with it as a second domino. That we would put our energy into justice, into criminal justice, so that we can then move on and do criminal justice and housing as we hire somebody new. That doesn't mean we're not doing anything. A couple things we can do in this meantime is we can continue to grow our network. You can help pass the word out within your congregations and beyond. We're always looking for new congregations too. We can encourage people to join us and to join us also in the investment of $200 and to become members, that we can organize around the next Nehemiah Assembly. You can talk to your congregational's organizer, whoever the lead person in your congregation is, and they can help you figure that out. You can help get the word out about our new job posting, because the sooner we have somebody in place, the sooner we can really kind of gear up both organizations. You can find out more, just contact anybody and they can get you to that job description that's involved with Just Pensacola. And also we can start talking to people about the issue of housing. Our ministry is built around stories. So having people tell us the stories of their challenges in housing will help us when we get ready to organize and start thinking about what issues we can do to address this. And as Cammie said, this issue is not just about one congregation. This goes across all of us. There's not a congregation in this organization that doesn't have right now somebody who is struggling to find affordable housing, retired military, single mom with 3 kids. We all know them. And so the more we can collect those stories, there's power in those stories. So the biggest action step we can take right now is to talk to people about issues of housing and ask them if you can share their story so that we can build that collection of stories, which will get us motivation going forward. So that's where we stand on housing. Is basically we're on a little bit of a pause, but we can do those 3 steps I said to you. And then we'll kick it really in overdrive once we bring somebody else on and once we're ready in the summer to do that. Thank you. Back to you, Pastor Blackman.
Thank you, Pastor Hoffman. At this time, we're going to have relationship building by Mr. Joe Johnson. Joe?
Thank you, Reverend Blackman. And Reverend Hoffman. It's my great privilege to tell you about the next step, because one of the things that I have really enjoyed about Just Pensacola is the opportunity to meet people from other congregations that I might not have an opportunity to meet in any other way, and to work with them on issues that we are so concerned about and work together to find hopefully solutions to some of these issues. It's not easy work, it's hard work, but a number of us have developed really close friendships through this work together. So we're going to now break into small groups. It's very important for us to tell our own stories related to criminal justice and to the criminal justice system and to housing. And telling our stories helps us to tap into why it's so important to be a witness to the problems related to these 2 symptoms in our city. So Reverend Young is going to break us out into groups of 3 or 4, and I'm going to ask you to answer these 2 questions. Do you have personal experience with unnecessary arrests or civil citations? What housing problem are you most concerned about and why? And it would be very helpful if at the end of that discussion or at any time, you are willing to share the issues that you raise or your concerns, to do it either through the chat system tonight or by sending an email to justpensacola@gmail.com.
Okay, I'm going to have 10 minutes for you to be in breakout rooms, and here you go. I'll put the questions in the chat box so you have it there too.
I'm just staying in here. I bumped myself back out.
Yep, thank you. I couldn't figure out how to do that fast enough.
No, I
Um,
realized how to do it as soon as it started to happen, so that was fine.
Jane and Penny, would you all like me to assign you to a room? Well, Jane must have found her room. Penny, would you like me to assign you to a room?
Hi, Sherry and Carla. I'm in the same room.
Yeah, it looks like in room 4, Angelina's by herself because Penny hasn't joined, so you might have to move her.
Yep, I'm going through and trying to move people.
Everyone else seems okay. If she just gets, she can get thrown into the one I was supposed to be in.
Yeah.
Maybe. I was also wondering, Cami, in my presentation, the first video of Nancy, when she tells her story of going to Orlando, she's really talking about seeing a neighborhood accountability in person. I was thinking maybe I could just cut that video because it's, you guys are working on the first part of that, which is civil citations for time. And then just jump, so skipping, so you actually wouldn't show the video until her second time speaking when we talk about the after the action video. Is that her? I think that's actually Geneva speaking. Second video after the action 2012. You're on mute, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so you're right. It was, it is still, it isn't Geneva, I don't think. What I've got is the first video of Nancy, we're going to skip now, you're saying, and go to the second video.
It's number 3. It's called After 20. Yeah, that's not Nancy. That's looks like it's Geneva. You might have.
Yeah.
It's Geneva. Okay.
Yep, I've got them in order, so I think we're all good. The first after action is, I'm looking at it right now, is Geneva. You're right.
Okay.
And then the second Angela betrayal is that's Lois. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think like just a little cut time here or there will get us back. Like,
okay.
And
sorry, mine was so dang long.
Well, you give a lot of emphasis on things, which makes it clearer, but just made it slower. So it's not the end of the world.
Mm.
And I think the actual agenda was for the original like time block on the Zoom call was 2 hours. So I had it ending early anyway. So I don't think it'll be like,
okay.
I will still end by 8. So I think we'll be okay.
Welcome, Deacon Ray. We're glad you're here. Would you like to be in a breakout group? Nope.
Okay.
Kristen, I am not good at keeping the time. I don't remember exactly what time we started the breakout rooms. If
Yeah,
you'll
we'd be
help
done
me
at
with,
7:55.
okay. Welcome, Deacon Ray. Good to have you here. I think you're on mute. Would you like to join a breakout group, or do you want to just hang out here with Kristen and me for the next 4 minutes?
I'll just hang out with you all. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can now. Sure
Okay,
can.
good.
Yeah.
No, I'll just hang out.
All right. Well, everybody is in a breakout group for 3 more minutes. I think I'm going to send a message to everyone so that they recognize that. So let's see here.
Yep, I see it.
Good. Well, we miss Aida. How's she doing? How are you all doing over at the diocesan office?
Yeah, we're doing fine. We're finishing up an event called Catholic Days at the Capitol. And Aida's been a blessing for that for me, because we've had to do it virtually this year, because normally we go to Tallahassee and we meet with our legislators in person. But of course, this year, nobody is allowed in the Capitol except for the legislators and their staff, and just the limited number of invited guests. So we've had to do it virtually, and I'm not very tech savvy, but so Aida's been able to help me set up meetings and work out any of the bugs, that happen. So so we're finishing up. We had one more meeting today, and with Senator Osley's office, and we've got 2 more representatives to meet with, and we're going to hopefully meet with them this week. So
Wonderful. Good deal.
yeah.
Welcome, John. I'm Cammie Young, and everyone is in a breakout room right now. We've got about 70 folks here, but they're all meeting in groups of 3. But they just have 1 more minute left. So if you'll just hang out here with us, who are co-hosts of the meeting, everyone will rejoin us in just a minute. Glad you're here. So, Kristen, you're up next, and I'm just going to skip the first slide altogether and go straight to when you call up, when you're ready for me to show the video, you just tell me.
Okay. Yep, as people come back in, I'll just get started.
Yeah.
When I
Okay,
start
I'm going to close the rooms now. Do you want me just to remind everyone to put in the chat
Bye-bye.
noise
Yeah.
they heard? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As people are returning, welcome back to the large group. We're over 70 strong. I want to remind you of what Mr. Joe Johnson asked us all to do, and that is think about the story you heard, the experience that was shared that that kind of got your attention most, that seemed to be most compelling to you, because we have got to start valuing and remembering and retelling these stories as part of the way we are winning campaigns. So please just chat either the name or the name of the person who told a compelling story that you heard in the chat box right now as we regather.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kristen Powell, and I am on the National Dart staff as their trainer for organizers. And I also play a consulting role for Just Pensacola. But before all that, I was an organizer in Jacksonville, Florida for 8 years. And I want to share with you a story about our campaign to win civil citations in that community. And so in 2011, we conducted a listening process with over 1,000 people participating. We had small group gatherings from across the city that occurred, and we heard lots of stories about children. We heard a story about a child who was at a Walmart and was wanted to clean their glasses, and passed one of those iMart stations and picked up some felt, cleaned his glasses, kept the felt, and the police were called, and he was arrested. We heard about another middle school student who was walking home from school and saw their friend getting bullied in the school parking lot. The child steps in to protect his friend and was arrested for inciting a riot. He was jailed for 48 hours without contact with his parents before being released. Story after story came in from our house meetings about the way that children are being mistreated by the criminal justice system. And one particular story that fueled our campaign was that of Lois Haft. Her grandson was getting in trouble a lot in school and then kept getting suspended. And one of the times that he was suspended, he was left at home without any supervision because his parents had to work. And he got bored and decided to put firecrackers in mailboxes. Well, that's actually a felony because mailboxes are federal property. And he was put as a child in an adult jail. And he was so traumatized by that situation that he ended up, when he came out, taking two prescription drugs and eventually overdosed and died. And Lois became a huge advocate for stopping unnecessary arrests of children because she knows if those arrests had stopped, her grandson would still be alive. And so that November, 500 iCare members came together to vote and picked youth crime as the problem that we should address as a faith community. And when we started our research, we found out a few things. 6,000 youth were arrested, or 6,000 youth arrests happened that year. And many of those arrests happened during the day when children like Lois's grandson had been suspended or just weren't at school. And it wasn't 6,000 individual children being arrested. There were actually a couple thousand getting arrested multiple times and then escalating. So we really had a recidivism problem. When we reached out to other cities like Baltimore and Orlando, we learned about something called restorative practices. And this is a program where the victim and the offender get to dialogue and a group of their neighbors decide on restitution outside of jail. The purpose is to get to the root cause of misbehavior and heal all parties that are harmed. When we saw that program in person in Orlando, we were so excited. We wanted that in Jacksonville. And after talking to some local leaders, like our public defender, we found out about civil citations. This was already a statewide program, as you know, where officers could issue a civil citation to minors who committed a first-time misdemeanor instead of arrest. But once given a civil citation, they would avoid jail time, right? We were excited that this was happening, and we discovered that when Orlando was using that program, 90% of children weren't reoffending. So we thought for sure Jacksonville would want to do it. And we thought it would really help our kids get away from incarceration and bounce back after making a mistake. Does this sound familiar? You know, but our surprise, Jacksonville was barely using the program. Only a third of youth who were eligible were actually receiving a civil citation in Jacksonville. And in your city, I found, or at least your county, Escambia County, 37% of eligible kids, only 37% are getting civil citations here. So not that much different. So we held a Nehemiah assembly in 2012 with over 2,000 people, and we had our state attorney and our sheriff attend, and we planned to ask them to issue civil citations to 90% of eligible youth and start restorative practices programs to divert them to. And that night they said yes. In fact, our state attorney said to our crowd of 2,200 people that she wanted to be put out of business. She wanted to have so many civil citations given that she would never have to prosecute children again. So I want to show you a clip of Geneva, a member of ICARE at the time, and what she thought after that night.
Courthouse to meet with the officials there.
Remember that, and I was so nervous because we were wanting her to get a yes from them. And I said, oh my God, when she said, yes, we want you to put me out of business, you know, I said, oh, thank you, because that was what we were fighting for, because these children needed a second chance. And that was, to me, that sealed the deal for me, being involved in with the civil citation and helping out children.
But we don't just stop there. We follow up and we follow up. And when we started to follow up, things actually took a turn. There was a small increase in civil citations usage after our Nehemiah assembly, but unfortunately, more white children were getting civil citations than the Black children for the same exact offenses. And kids that were eligible were being robbed of the opportunity by the sheriff's office because the sheriff was citing resisting arrest as the reason for that. And I'm going to come back to what that means later. And even if they got a civil citation, the state attorney was still prosecuting youth who committed simple battery without injury, which is basically like shoving or maybe a slap, but no one was injured. And then data was not being kept on the children that weren't getting civil citations. Data wasn't being kept on diversions. And so they weren't even clear what they were doing. And so we were angry and felt lied to that our sheriff and state attorney were not really diverting the youth they said they would. So here's another testimony from Lois after she realized what was happening.
Remember that, and
After the action, when Angela Corey said that she was willing to sign a memorandum of understanding, I was really excited. And when we got off the stage, she shook my hand and it acted as though we were in collaboration. Then, when she refused to sign it and stonewalled, it just felt like we were being betrayed and that we were just up against a wall that we could not break through. After the action.
So we had to begin a 4-year fight with our state attorney and sheriff to do what was right for our kids. And during that time, we had several clashes with these two officials. And really it happened because we started asking more specific questions about the program. They were fine when we were just, celebrating them for making a commitment. But when we were actually asking for details about what that commitment meant and how that was actually being carried out, because we were seeing kids continue to get arrested, they weren't happy with that and didn't really want to meet, didn't really want to follow through anymore. So with our sheriff, when we first met with him after we realized that kids weren't getting civil citations, we realized that the big thing was a discrepancy between what the state was saying was eligible and what the local county was saying was eligible. So we asked him who is eligible in Duval County. And when we realized was that he was taking several offenses that the state was saying kids could get civil citations for, but he was not letting the kids in Duval County get those civil citations. And we found that troubling. And the number one reason was resisting arrest. And what we found out is that resisting arrest was when he felt like his officers were being disrespected by the children. maybe they ran, they gave false identification, or they backtalked. So a kid who should have gotten a civil citation because maybe they did some vandalism or they petty theft, if they were smart aleck or disrespectful to the officer, all of a sudden their chances were taken away. And what we were finding is that it was the Black children, when they were disrespectful, that were getting that, and a lot of the white children, even if it was cited as resisting arrest, still got a civil citation. And when we asked him about why he was doing that, he actually started to yell at us in the meeting. And why were we questioning him and what his officers were doing? And after that meeting, he announced his retirement and refused to engage with us anymore. So we had to pivot and focus on the new sheriff's race. And we were able to get civil citations as a major part of the sheriff's race and get the new sheriff, Williams, who ended up winning, to commit to doing the program as a part of his platform. I'll come back to what happened with that later, but he did follow through. But the bigger challenge was with our state attorney. She was a long-term state attorney who won based on tough on crime policies. She was actually known for prosecuting children as adults. And one particular hard exchange was when we had a meeting with her at her office where she finally agreed to talk to us. And when we got there, she locked the door to the building. We couldn't actually get in the building. She had tipped off the media, invited the media to be at the meeting, which we didn't know. And instead of being able to get into her building, she came outside and started to yell at us in a public square in front of the sheriff. I'm sorry, in front of the media. The next day, she got a local clergy person, or so we thought, to write a public apology to her from the faith community on how we treated her. Come to find out that local clergy person was actually a clergy person from Georgia who doesn't live in Jacksonville at all. But that stunt caused so much division in our organization because no one understood what was happening and who was speaking for us. I'm now going to show you a testimony from Nancy, I believe, what she felt after that event with the state attorney, Corey. Do you need me to pull it up,
Kristen
Tammy?
is, oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the one that you were going to show. I apologize.
No,
Nope,
it's okay.
I've got it.
Meeting scheduled with State Attorney Corey, and we went up and she met us as we started to walk into the building and said, no, you can't come in. And some of the pastors were out and there was press out there. And so we all ended up, she goes out there and we're all out there and she's ranting and raving and looking at me specifically, calling me by name and saying, you know, what a horrible person I was to even attempt to go against her on anything. And it was like I was in a total state of shock. I've never seen an official treat somebody that way. I remember, and I can't tell you what I said, but I remember I was responding back to her that day. But it was like I was just absolutely overwhelmed and totally shocked that she was attacking me personally, because I had never attacked her personally. You know, I had held her accountable.
So that was Nancy's reflection on that day. And so, you know, we were pretty demoralized after that. We did go to a city council meeting a couple of weeks later where our public defender invited us to speak about the merit of civil citations, but the state attorney and sheriff showed up and the state attorney started to show videos of children being beaten and bloodied and really beaten to death at the city council meeting in front of hundreds of people, saying that iCare wanted those children out on the streets. And in fact, children that commit aggravated assault or attempted murder don't get a civil citation. Although we truly believe, and studies show, that if kids get a second chance when they are nonviolent, they don't become violent later on. So she, again, tried to discredit us, divide us, and take us down. And so after that day, we really started to shift things by building relationships with key business leaders, like the owners of the Jaguars. We got the superintendent of schools on our side, and they started using civil citations in the schools. We enabled the community to see that the fact that her approach to children was hurting children. And for the first time, the public started questioning her legitimacy. She was up for re-election. She typically run unopposed, but that election she didn't. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. And so this was a nonpartisan issue, and both people, she was Republican as well as the person running against her was Republican. So this wasn't about parties, but the new person who ran against her eventually won, and we invited them to our Nehemiah assembly. And so I want to show you a final video of what happened at that action. Give me a second.
Sheriff Williams. Yes, ma'am. I like that. Will you follow the criteria of the current state law and issue civil citations to 90% of eligible youth by March 28 of 2018? We will. That's a yes. Responsible for arrest.
That's right.
But you do have a say in which of our children get prosecuted and how they are held accountable for their offenses.
We do.
There are hundreds of youth that are not eligible for civil citation because they are a multiple offender, they've stolen something that's more than $300, or they've had multiple traffic violations. These are nonviolent youth that should still get a chance to enter into a restorative justice programs through neighborhood accountability boards outside of jail. Will you divert nonviolent youth that don't qualify for civil citations to neighborhood accountability boards?
Yes, in appropriate cases we will.
That's a yes.
But we had learned from the first time that we got yeses 5 years previously, and we got them to sign a memorandum of understanding within 30 days of that action that stated that all eligible offenses at the state level were also eligible in Duval County. And now Jacksonville is a statewide leader in civil citations. Nearly 3,000 kids have gone through the program and got access to civil citations because of our work. And so finally, I want to show you what Geneva had to say after she realized we won, really won this time.
And I meeting scheduled with State Attorney Corey, and we went up and she met us as we started to walk into the building and said, no, you can't come in. And some of the pastors were out.
If it doesn't pop up, that's okay. I'll just share it with you. Geneva that night.
That was a
okay.
relief because, we had been working on this for quite a while. And it was like, okay, our kids are going to get a second chance. And to me, that was just the greatest thing because that is my passion. Children are my passion. And I want to see them succeed, and be the best people that they can be. And that decision, and when they said yes, and we said, okay, we've got it, we won, that was just the best feeling. And from there, we took off, with the Neighborhood Accountability Board. And that, of course, was another part of it.
So, that took us 5 years, but it didn't have to. What I share these stories with you because for a few reasons. We needed consistent power to win, and because we continue to turn out to actions, continue to do what you guys are doing by showing up to these meetings and strategizing, we did win. Each of those people you saw in the videos were negotiating with those officials at every meeting, major meeting, and were a part of getting their congregations involved in the work. I also tell you this story because if you ask the right questions, you can really get to the root of what's going on in your community faster. We wasted years in our campaign because we didn't know what to ask and what was really going on. And so asking the tough questions earlier, you know, if you think about it, saves lives, because while we were trying to win, hundreds of kids every year continue to get arrested when they shouldn't have. I also just want to remind you that public officials can say one thing and do the opposite. And it takes courage and persistence to make sure that they actually do what is right. That doesn't mean they are going to do the opposite, but we always have to make sure that we follow up. iCare changed the way that police dealt with children in Jacksonville. It was a monumental victory for us. And 97% of kids that have gone through a civil citation program in Jacksonville have never reoffended. 97%. You know, Jacksonville is not the only city that has been up against tough on crime politicians. Organizations all over Florida have been fighting for civil citations over the last decade, and you're in a crucial moment in your campaign. You have some agreements from some really key officials in your city that you got this past August, but now they have to follow through. And the first 6 months of their time in office will really determine if this campaign is an immediate win or will it take much longer? And so I just implore you to ask the right questions and to meet with those officials early on so that you can make sure that unnecessary arrests don't continue to happen. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. Back to you, Reverend Blackman.
Okay, at this time, we're going to have our strategy for meeting with the state attorney and the sheriff. And I'm thinking someone is going to break us out. We're going to disseminate into 2 groups.
That's right.
Okay.
And ready to go. So I think we're back to you, Chairperson, Reverend Blackman, for the final wrap up, and Pastor Easley with reviewing upcoming meetings and closing prayer.
You're muted, Reverend Blackman.
Thank you all. And Pastor Easley, perhaps you can move on to the
I'm
next
sorry, I was
agenda.
talking and I was muted. Forgive me.
That's all right. That's
Yes,
all right. You want to
yes.
repeat what you had to say? I'm sure we want to hear it.
Well, some of the things I said I probably shouldn't repeat. But at this time, we're going to ask Pastor Easley if she would come now and give us an update on the upcoming meetings that we have.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm so excited to have such a large crowd here tonight to help us build powerful campaign. You are the people that are going to make sure that we win civil citations for the hundreds of children who are being robbed of their future because of unnecessary arrests. Records. No, you are the people that will help us launch a campaign to tackle a part of the housing problems here in Escambia County. Like Reverend Hoffman said, we need you to build power and to invest financially in this work so we can continue to be a prophetic witness for fairness and justice in our community. Now on the screen, you will see a list of upcoming dates, and we're going to need you to mark them on your calendar. And they're also a part of your agenda also. Our dates are to be announced. We will be meeting with the sheriff and state attorney in the month of March. And the second date is April the 12th, 2021. We will have our Just Pensacola rally. It will be from 6 to 8 p.m. We might also use this date as a strategic meeting to unpack what we learned from the state attorney and the sheriff. On May the 3rd, 2021, again from 6 to 8 o'clock, we will have our Just Pensacola Nehemiah Action, our first one. And on June the 14th, 2021, from 6 to 8 o'clock, we will have our Justice Ministry Celebration. And so, as we said before, please mark these days on your calendar. And we thank you for being here with us tonight. And we will end in prayer.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Let me say this just before you close us with prayer. Again, I do want to thank each of you for being here tonight. Thank you for your time, your energy, your concern, your prayers, your questions, your insights that you gave. It helps us to be more effective in our efforts. It helps us when we hear even dissenting voices within the organization. So I just want to say on behalf of Reverend Hoffman and all of us, Just Pensacola, to each of you, we love you and thank you for being with us on tonight. Michelle.
Before we close in prayer, there is a question in the chat. Someone would like to know, will we get the presentation? Will this presentation
Yes.
be recorded?
I'll email it to all who are present. You bet.
Okay, thank you. All right, now for our closing prayer. Eternal God, Lord, we thank you for the meeting that we have had this evening. We thank you for those who felt it not robbery to give of their time to come together to discuss the issues of civil citation, and also to hear about affordable housing and share their concerns. Lord, we just ask you to just bless us that we might be a blessing to those, for we know that many of our youth are being prosecuted and arrested for things that they really should not receive a record for. But we thank you, Lord, that there are people who stand and say no more. And Lord, we ask you just continue to bless us and to allow us to grow, Father. We ask for increase, Father, increase in numbers, increase in congregation, Father, increase in commitment, Father, increase, Lord, and just the ability, Father, to be able to just endure. We know that everyone will not agree. We know that everyone will not be on board. We know that there are some officials that may give us a hard time or not want to hear us, Father. But we just ask that you allow us to be those who say we're going to keep on anyway. We will not stop. We will be heard because we know that this is just too valuable. We thank you for this committee, Lord, and we just ask that you will just continue to bless us, Father, that we may be able to make a difference right here in Escambia County, Father. And we thank you in advance for all that we know that you're going to do in and through us as we open ourselves up to be used by you. And Lord, we ask these and all blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. And I would love to ask for those who were speaking this evening to please stay on for us to do a quick evaluation before we lay our heads on the pillow or have dinner or whatever it is that's next. Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you, Lord, for helping with the admitting and muting. So, Kristen, would you like to lead us in debriefing, or would you like me to?
I can if you'd like. It's up to you.
Sure, that'd be great. Go for it.
Okay. If we could just go around and share, one thing that kind of energized you tonight, and anything that you think we could improve for the next time we do this. I'll start with you, Reverend Branch.
I was energized just with all of the questions and thoughts that folks were having during our questioning time. It's just, to have everybody so engaged.
Anything to improve?
I think it all went real well. We got off on time, but then we caught up on time, so we did well with that.
Reverend Blackman?
Yes, I'm very pleased. I'm, again, like Reverend Branch said, I was happy to see the input of others when we broke out in our sessions, some concerns that they had, questions that they had. I think it helps us to tailor what we will ask for moving forward. I think I have always believed that we are smarter collectively than we are individually. And so the more of us that we get in a room to share our concerns, our knowledge, and our beliefs, I think it helps us be a much sharper organization, much more focused, a pinpoint focus on what it is we're trying to achieve.
Was there anything that you wanted to improve about tonight?
Yes, my technological skills. Yes.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that Freddie started us off getting us fired up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did an excellent job. Yes.
Well, let's go to you, Reverend. Tell us something that went well and something you want to improve, if anything.
I think the overall technology was okay, but like Reverend Blackman, sometimes we individually are challenged. But I think it went well. What can things to be improved? In both breakout rooms, we had new people that have questions about what we talked about 18 months ago. And in that last breakout room was a good example when, and I was trying to give a hint to this lady, but she didn't take the hint, but it was, what questions should we have? And then one lady started going through all the processes and paperwork and this. Another lady started telling us stories, which there wasn't time for a story, it was time for questions. And so and then Reverend Blackman just talked about pinpoint focus. Well, pinpoint focus get lost when we have to stop and go to the back of the train and try to bring that person forward. And this is their first time on.
Well, and that's just a good lesson to all of us when we invite people from our congregations to the research to take some initiative and catch them up so that when they show up to the meeting, they at least have some background, because that's going to happen. You want to bring new people in, but it'll be the team leaders that invited them's job to, get them updated.
So then should the team leader maybe tell them, I know you're going to have questions and stuff, write them down and you and I can go over them at a different time?
Maybe, yeah. Or if they don't have the answer, like I'll get the answer for you from someone else, because sometimes people, even experienced leaders, don't know exactly.
But overall, I think with Joe Johnson has improved greatly. That really made the night go really good.
Well, he's calling on you, Jess. So what would be something you thought went well and anything you want to improve?
Joe?
Oh, you calling on me?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that part. I thought it was all very good. We had new people, and I think that was important. We had some new people who asked some really good questions and who brought some new skills and experience to our group, and I think that's wonderful. In terms of and I thought Reverend Blackman did a really good job of leading that discussion group around the issue, because you have so much knowledge and you steered it as well as you could. But sometimes when you have a big group like that, things will you can't control it completely. So I was understanding of some of those issues. One of the things that I do, and I'm just planning this earlier, I will now go tomorrow or the next day, I will go out with an email to all of our network and tell them and that includes the network from last cycle and this cycle. That's a lot of people at our church. And I will tell them what happened tonight. And it is hard, and we've lost so much energy because of COVID. It's hard to keep everybody on the same page. And so I would encourage you all to think about that. And I try to do that whenever something new comes up, or even when something new isn't coming up, I try to let everybody know what's going on. So.
Yeah, that'll be important. And I think, Kimmy, you said you were going to send something out as a summary to the team or people that were here. And so some of that probably could be forwarded on to others.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
What about you, Reverend Easley?
I think it was a really good, I think it was a really good meeting, and I think that Reverend Branch did an excellent job in that breakout room. Everyone was flowing and pretty much staying right on track with the questions, and even going back and looking and recalling from your slide with your questions from before. So I thought that was really good. One thing that I would say technology-wise, that I know that Zoom gives you the capability of being able to select which group you want to be a part of. And so that last one, instead of assigning people to a group, I think, and I remember when we had our meeting in person, people were able to decide which group they want to be a part of. And so I think to give that option, group number one, group number two, sign in. And that's the only thing I think that could have been done differently.
Yeah, that's good feedback. I know that's a newer feature that I forget about. And then Reverend Young, did you have anything?
Excuse me, before you go on. So would that be something they would have to sign up when they register?
No.
No, it's like a feature that just pops up as like a window, and then you can press it like in the middle of the meeting.
So it's
We've
one
used
at a time,
it.
you have to go through one at a time? So you would have to click like tonight, like 71 times?
No, no, there's
No.
when I break out rooms into two, it says, do you want to assign automatically, assign manually, which is very difficult. I've done it before, but it's not easy.
Okay.
Or let participants choose room is my third option. So it's new option. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was only referring to when we did the two major breakouts,
Yeah, the big
not
ones.
those small ones.
Right,
but
right,
the
right.
breakout. And
Yeah.
then if a
One-
person is on the telephone, they would just tell you, and you would just manually assign those individuals to a
Right.
Good call.
Yeah.
I would like us to think about making the smaller breakout groups a little bit bigger, because Rick was in mine, and none of us had any real experience with the background, so we weren't able to get into the issues as much as we would have liked. And so you can't really pick who's going to go there, and I know that would take a long time and try to figure that out. But if we'd had a couple more people, I think we might have had a more interesting discussion.
You're talking about the relationship building earlier. You
Yes.
just
Right.
randomly
Yep.
ended up with
Yeah.
someone you already knew.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cami, did you have something you
Oh,
wanted to
just,
say about?
you know, when I timed the script that I had, it was 18 minutes. Trying to get it down to 15, and it went way over 18 minutes. So anyway, I'm not sure what to do, except when I'm in real life, I talk slower, I think, than I do when I'm just reading a script. So I got to work on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do. Well, I just want to say, I think it was a really exciting meeting. And like you said, Reverend Tellis really started us off excited and giving us a call to action. I think it set the tone for the rest of the meeting.
It did.
And
It did.
I know there were questions about kind of I know we won't know this until maybe a couple of days after you talk to leaders, but how are people feeling? Where we spent most of the time on civil citations and didn't get into housing yet. So going and kind of testing the waters and seeing what people took away with that would be helpful, for future, because that won't be forever. Hopefully the next time we have a bigger meeting like this to do research, we would have a housing breakout. But other than that, I think it was a great night, and thank you all for being here, and we'll update you as soon as we get a sheriff and state attorney meeting.
I have a question. What should I do with these questions that we receive?
Oh, can you send them to me? Because
yeah, I emailed them to everybody in the group here. So maybe if you just reply all to my email, Pastor Easley, with your questions, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep them for whenever these meetings get scheduled, because then we'll already have some questions to start with.
Okay.
Have a good evening, everyone.
It was a great meeting. Thank you all.
Rick,
Good night, all.
Call me.
See you in a few weeks, I hope, in reality.
Who are you wanting to call you, Freddie?
Rick, would you give me a call?
Yeah, right now. Okay.
Adios.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.